Lagos, right, okay. Well, as you know, we've been talking about Mr. Trump's tariffs, which we've been trying to break down all day, the tariffs that have affected so many countries, including Nigeria. For more on this, I'm joined now on the line from Lagos by the Director of the Public Sector Initiative at the Lagos Business School, Dr. Franklin Ngwu, who's also an Associate Professor in Strategy, Corporate Governance and Risk Management. Nice of you to join us. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Ngwu. Just break down for us Donald Trump's tariffs. The import taxes, of course, vary from country to country, with hikes ranging from 10 to 50%, it seems. Lots of badly hit losers, I understand.
Yes, of course, people receiving the tariff will complain in terms of countries. People who are importing that will pay the tariffs will complain. However, if you listen to Trump very well yesterday with regards to the tariffs and the reasons for the tariffs, you might begin to say, oh, he has reasons or he has some justifications for this tariff. So for example, Nigeria is 14% and some other countries higher, 40%, 30%, UK 10%, as the case may be. So from his own assessment, he believes that US has been very, very, the big brother of the world, helping other countries. It means that America has been paying for some of these charges that they are now trying to collect from imports coming from these other countries. So if you look at what Donald Trump is saying, I think you will say that America has paid enough. They don't want to continue to subsidize the global economy or the global trade from different countries. And if you also look at the tariffs from these countries, he's not really doing match for match. It's just countries like UK that is 10%, that is now doing 10%, and some countries that he has raised. But generally, the tariffs that they are placing now are somehow lower than what they are also charging American goods in these countries. So will it cause certain challenges in the global economy, in the global trade? Yes, of course it will. The question then is, will these countries also retaliate or react in the same mood? Will they increase their tariffs further? Will they now keep it at the way it is? But with regards to America, of course, it will rattle.
Right. Well, I'm going to get into all that in a minute, Prof. But, I mean, it's interesting, just looking at the countries that you were sort of listing there, it's interesting that some of the highest tariffs have been imposed on some of the world's poorest countries, including Cambodia, Bangladesh, and Madagascar. I mean, how does it make sense to impose duties of nearly 50% on poorer nations trying to trade their way out of poverty?
It depends on how you look at it. If you're talking about creating an inclusive world, creating a more equitable world, creating a more, maybe from a moral point of view, of course, these factors can come into. But if you are looking at purely trade, if these countries are charging America, America is saying, oh, it's time for us to also charge them. But I also believe that after this announcement, after this tariff goes into effect, if you've been following the way Trump has been going, of course, once he announced something, after some time, there will be a kind of moderation. So I believe that some of these poor countries, there will still be a kind of negotiation or adjustment in some of these tariffs. Of course, I mean, he has just given a general tariff announcement cutting across different countries. But of course, at the end of the day, maybe if they start seeing the impact of receiving maybe some revenue from the tariffs, maybe there might be some adjustment and say, okay, Cambodia, you are very poor. Lesotho, you are not very, very rich. Madagascar, you are not very, very rich. So we can reduce some of this tariff. Remember also that in Nigeria, we have the AGOA, which we normally benefit from. But this time around, Trump is saying, let's rethink everything. Let's rethink the global trade and all that.
So, I mean, I'm wondering, of course, Prof, you are a very knowledgeable economist, both of African sort of economic affairs and internationally. I mean, Does it seem to you, based on what you saw Donald Trump doing and the way that many countries have reacted so far, does it seem like the rules of world trade are being rewritten with a significant move away from what had seemed to many to be the global ideal of free trade?
It depends on how you look what is an ideal trade. I'm saying from countries like, for example, Nigeria, of course, we will be saying what kind of behavior is this from Trump or some other countries. But if you're looking at it from Trump perspective, from an American perspective, they are saying that you're already charging American goods into your, when you bring in American goods into,
what I said,
Nigeria or other
I don't mean
countries.
to interrupt you, Prof. What I said was, does it seem to you like it is the global ideal of free trade? I mean, the whole basis of the world economy over the last few decades has been free trade. But now we're seeing tariffs being imposed and restrictions being imposed on that free trade.
In reality, you know that free trade is good. I mean, it's accepted as one of the best ways to promote sustainable economic development. However, in reality, do we really have free trade? So what Trump is doing is more or less saying we have to renegotiate, we have to rethink what we call free trade. We have to look at the trade agreements between America and other countries. So in reality, do we really have free trade? So if you import certain things from certain countries, you normally get it free. Even in Africa, where you have African Continental Free Trade Agreement, where we're supposed to have free trade, is it really free? When you bring in goods from other African countries to Nigeria, is it normally free? When you bring goods from other countries into Nigeria, is it normally free? So free trade in reality is questionable. And of course, there have also been challenges with regards to free trade. There are also issues with regards to WTO, whereby there are issues with China, with America, with other countries. So I think it's time for the global leaders and the global institutions to sit back and say, what are we really doing? What kind of free trade do we want? What kind of trade agreement do we want? What kind of global trade do we want? So I'm not sure that what Trump is doing can be condemned entirely. I think what is supposed to happen is for a renegotiation. America is also saying that we've been having deficits in some of these things. So it is time for us to now say, no, we cannot continue in that space. So it also says that WTO, this means that WTO has a lot of work to do in terms of calling for meetings, in terms of engagement, in terms of trying to re-engage these global leaders to say, how do we do it? Because there are negative consequences of this tariff. There are also positive consequences of this tariff. So it depends on the balance in terms of how you want to look at it.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned the World Trade Organization because, I mean, the US has been undermining the WTO. It's actually stopped funding the WTO. It's withheld funds for 2024 and 2025. And China, of course, now looking like the defender of free trade and the supporter of multilateral institutions, in contrast to the way the US is operating. I'm wondering if we might see, perhaps because of economic necessity, other countries drawing closer to China, including even large Western economies, as a result of these tariffs and further away from the US.
There will be disruptions globally. I mean, China has also reacted and saying that what America is doing is wrong. They don't accept it, and they are calling on Trump to immediately cancel or go back to status quo. Definitely, if China, not only China, other global big traders like India, like Brazil, like Russia, or like Europe, they might say, okay, look at what Trump is doing. Let's tap into it. Let's maybe reduce our own negotiated trade agreement with other countries. But of course, even if you look at it in practical terms, there has been a steady increase with regards to trade between China and other countries. So maybe what Trump has done might enhance that negotiation, might enhance that trade between China and other countries. But what I'm trying to say is that at the end of the day, all this volatility will happen within the short term, but in the medium to long term, there will be a kind of moderation whereby there will be negotiation. There are certain goods that China has competitive advantage on. There are also certain areas that the US has competitive advantage on. So there will also be a kind of moderation. But going forward in terms of long term, China really poses a big, let's say, big challenge to the global, to US, as well as India and other big traders.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much indeed. I'm afraid you had problems getting to the studio, so that cut off a little bit of the time that you would have had. But we do appreciate very much indeed your expert analysis. Dr. Franklin Ngwu is the director of the Public Sector Initiative at the Lagos Business School. He's also an associate professor in strategy, corporate governance, and risk management. He was talking to me from our studios in Lagos.